This is episode 20 with Dr. David Jockers. Welcome to My Kid Cures Cancer. My name is Ryan Sternagel, former regular guy turned dadcologist, cancer coach, and health advocate. Each week we'll talk to a new expert on a particular aspect of beating cancer or human optimization to bring you one step closer on your path to true health. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Now let's dive into this valuable, life-saving information which you're not going to hear about in a mainstream hospital. All right, everybody, I think we may have hit a breakthrough for this interview as someone has actually mentioned carrot juice and ketosis as acceptable practices for a cancer patient, in the same sentence no less. I was starting to think we'd never see the day. Dr. David Jockers, DNM, DCMS, is a doctor of natural medicine, functional nutritionist, and corrective care chiropractor. He currently owns and operates Acidity Health Center in Kennesaw, Georgia. He has developed 6 revolutionary online programs with thousands of participants. These programs include e-guides, meal plans, and video instructions, including the Sugar Detox, the Cancer Cleanse, Navigating the Ketogenic Diet, the Digestive Health Restoration Program, the Autoimmune Elimination Program, and the Super Brain Program. Dr. Jockers is a sought-after speaker around the country on such topics as weight loss, brain health, functional exercise, natural detoxification, and disease prevention. Dr. Jockers sees patients at his clinic, Acidity Health Center, as he does long-distance consultations by phone and Skype to customize specific lifestyle plans to help individuals improve performance and beat chronic disease. And this was a really cool episode to record. If you've been listening to the show for a while now, you know that I've been attempting to be the guy in the middle between the ketosis / high fat advocates and the Gerson / high fruit advocates. And I think we have come the closest so far in this interview with Dr. David Jockers. We started off talking about Dr. Jockers' own experience with skin cancer and how taking a step back and a hard look at his life and making the appropriate changes was enough to turn it around. David defined what it means to be metabolically flexible and energy efficient, and this in itself almost transcends the keto versus no keto argument in the sense that no matter what dietary strategy you choose, your body should have the ability to go back and forth between different fuel sources, and if it doesn't, you've likely got a problem. We talked about the specific type of ketogenic diet Dr. Jockers has people in his clinic going through cancer implementing, and how someone could even likely follow a vegan diet or Gerson-inspired protocol and still be working towards this metabolic flexibility we're talking about. Dr. Jockers spent a lot of time covering a vast array of health benefits and anti-cancer benefits from time spent in ketosis and fasting in particular, and how it has been used throughout the ages. We also, on that note, discussed specific fasting strategies and how to find what approach is best for you. As always, very glad you found your way to My Kid Cures Cancer, where it is our goal to bring all sides of the discussion on how to heal cancer and be truly healthy to the same table to give you one place to tune into for the most well-rounded perspective possible. This is a show for people going through cancer, by people going through cancer, inspired by my wife Teddy and I's experience with childhood cancer, bringing our son Ryder back from a stage 4 cancer diagnosis to the happy, healthy little boy he is today. If you aren't dealing with cancer and want to keep it that way, this show will likely be very helpful to you as well. We'll get to David in just a minute, but first I am required to let you know that this show is for informational purposes only and is not intended to replace professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. I am recording this right before I head to the Truth About Cancer Live in Orlando, Florida for the weekend. This will air the Monday after the event, so hopefully you had time to tune in over the weekend, but we will certainly keep you posted if there are any opportunities for replays or if they'll be making any of the talks available or anything of that nature. I'm sure they'll be making the whole thing available for purchase, and if you are going through cancer or are serious about preventing it for that matter, that is something you might want to consider. I know some of the talks there are going to be pretty high level, especially after having done this interview with Dr. Jockers. I'm incredibly excited to be seeing his presentation, and I think you will be too. So we will certainly keep you posted on the latest after the event at mykidcurescancer.com/TTAC live. TTAC standing for the Truth About Cancer, of course. Quick reminder that if you are watching this on YouTube, you can get it on the go on iTunes. And if you are listening to the podcast, do be sure to check out the My Kid Cures Cancer YouTube channel, where we post the videos of these interviews along with a whole lot of other videos on just how we make all of these advanced health strategies work for our family, which includes first and foremost 2 small children. All right, everybody, with that, let's get to Dr. David Jockers. Welcome back, everyone, to the My Kid Cures Cancer podcast. We have with us Dr. David Jockers. Dr. Jockers, thanks for coming on. How are you?
Hey, great to be on with you, Ryan. Doing awesome. Just enjoying this beautiful Thursday here with my family, getting some work done, and excited to be on this podcast with you.
Is it 8th time's the charm, something like that?
Yeah, we keep going back and forth with scheduling this, right? But I'm excited for what you're doing here and really getting your son's story out and giving hope and, just really empowering so many people out there that are walking around that just really, they're lost, they're scared, they hear, a lot of misinformation, and you're out there being a source of truth. So, so really excited for what you're doing.
Yeah, and there's certainly a lot of information out there to sort through, which can be overwhelming at times. But I always found it almost more empowering, if that makes sense, just knowing that what I was being presented with, at least in the hospital, and the first couple people I talked to, even if that stuff didn't work, I found comfort in knowing there was always something else to try, that you didn't necessarily have to get it right day one and know everything day one, but just taking action in general is better than not taking action. So that's always been our motto. I know I'm excited to get you on, and like we were just talking about before we started recording here, maybe dig into fasting and maybe overlay that with ketosis, as I know those are what you're big into these days. And I know you also had your own personal scare with cancer. Scare might not be the right word. Your brush with it. Do you want to maybe start with that and talk about, did you employ those things when you were trying to heal or actively healing yourself of cancer, or is that more recent that you've gotten into those strategies?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm just going to actually scale back and just go back to my childhood. Really my biggest mentor in my childhood, I'm one of 6 kids. So my mom and dad were working all the time, obviously, to take care of a big family like that. And my grandfather was a huge mentor for me. And so he taught me how to drive. He gave me jobs, mowing lawn, cleaning his car, things like that. So, he was helping me earn income, and he used to teach business in school. So he was just a huge mentor for me. And then when I was 19, he actually came home. He was retired at the time. He had been playing golf. Came home one day from playing golf, went to open a sliding glass door, and literally broke his arm opening the door. And so my grandmother got him in the car. He was freaking out, rushed from the emergency room. They went ahead, they took an x-ray, found out he had fractured his arm. But how do you do that opening a door, right? You don't. So they went ahead, they did a biopsy, found out he had metastatic cancer, had spread throughout his body into his bones. And of course, what do they put you on? Chemo, radiation. So my grandfather started on that. And in 6 months, he lost literally over 100 pounds, right? So he was 6'3", 210, strong, stocky guy. By the time he died, he was 106 pounds, just literally skin and bones. And literally in the worst pain, just on tons of medications. At the end of his life, in a nursing home, basically a assisted living area of the hospital, and then eventually hospice. And just literally every day we would be praying that he would go peacefully. He just wanted to die at that point. Yeah. And so I was 19. That was really my introduction to chronic disease. Before that, I had heard about people getting disease, but I never really saw it firsthand and not affecting somebody that I knew and that I loved. And, later on in my journey, and really my grandfather had metastatic melanoma, which is a skin cancer that spreads throughout your body. And so later on in my health journey, and really I became a personal trainer. I was always really fascinated with performance. and struggled with irritable bowel, and a chiropractor helped me with nutrition and chiropractic care, helped me overcome irritable bowel. And I regained my health and my life, and I started implementing intermittent fasting strategies and things like that. And I was seeing huge results. And then I graduated from graduate school at the age of, I was just about 27 at that point, started my practice and was in $170,000 of debt and living in my clinic. And, just living basically, it was fear-based living. I was scared to fail. But working 80 to 90 hours, and I had tremendous success according to the world standards, right? I had a great clinic, was able to pay off all that student loans and business loans in a matter of 2 years, had great success, but had absolutely no balance in my life, was still living in just tremendous fear that it would all just fall apart, was working, basically from the time I woke up in the morning till the time I went to bed, 6 days a week, and then probably an 8-hour day on Sunday doing some marketing or something along those lines. Just crazy hours that you would never recommend for anybody. But as a young entrepreneur, just kind of what you do. I didn't have a family. And all of a sudden I started developing this nodule on my nose. Okay. I was 28. It was about a year into practice, started developing this nodule on my nose. And of course, metastatic skin cancer is what killed my grandfather. And I grew up in Florida and had been sunburnt way more times than somebody should, just due to being on the beach a lot. I used to bodyboard and surf and things like that. And so obviously it was in my family history. I had those risk factors. And so my hope was that this was just acne. Right? I had acne before, right? That it was just acne would go away on its own. And month by month went by, and it was just getting bigger and more asymmetrical. And as a doctor, I mean, I'm not a dermatologist, but I know enough to know what's normal and what's not normal.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, finally I just had to look at myself and say, I could see it in the mirror every day. Just be like, this is something that could kill me. And this is a sign that I need to change what I'm doing. And it's really what I knew inside of my heart. It was like, hey, I was living kind of like in this cage, right, as a slave to my practice, as a slave in my life, because I thought I just have to wake up in the morning, 5:30 a.m. or whatever it was, work my butt off all day long, right, go to bed. At that point, I was going to bed late. I wasn't sleeping well. I mean, just had a really incongruent life. I was living healthier, I would say, than most people, but still incongruent compared to really what I was teaching and what I teach today. And, I took inventory and I realized, number one, the number one driver in my life was fear. And when you're driven by fear, then you're on your way to chronic disease, right? We all experience fear, and it's a normal, natural thing, and we're never going to go through life without experiencing it. But when it's like the driving force in your life and it's constantly there, that is as big a carcinogen as anything out there, right? And that was, my number one driving force. Number two was I was definitely eating a lot more carbohydrates than my body type. I would binge at night. I would take like Ezekiel bread, which is the healthy bread, right? And I was living in my clinic, so I only had a toaster and a little refrigerator and things like that. And I would toast it, and I would put coconut oil all over it and a bunch of like organic blueberries on it, and it tasted amazing. And of course, since I was working all day, I was stressed out, and I was craving sugar, and that really satisfied my craving. So for my body type, definitely high carbohydrate diet does not work for me, and so that was definitely not good. I was overtraining. I'd work out 7 days a week because my shower was in the gym across the street from my office. So I would go in there, and I love exercise. And I thought, I'm just going to work out every day. It's going to be short, 20 minutes or so, right? But I'm work out every day, and I'll shower afterwards. And I was overtraining my body. I was doing too much exercise compared to the amount of stress I was under. So I was actually creating a catabolic environment inside of my body and an inflammatory environment by doing that. And I was also showering in a shower with chlorinated water because, of course, I didn't have a shower filter. So that was another big carcinogen. In fact, I was sleeping in my clinic, and it was my main bathroom that I would use. I have two bathrooms in the clinic. The main bathroom, I had a chemical X-ray processor in there, right? And I was exposed to that. later I got digital X-ray, so you don't have the toxins, but I was exposed to that, and it was literally right where the power panel was. So I was right under the power panel in my clinic. So you think about the amount of EMFs I was being exposed to right there. And so really I just took inventory of all these things. Okay, my thought world was way off. My nervous, as a chiropractor, I wasn't even really taking good care of my spine and nervous system. And so I wasn't taking good care of that. My nutrition was off. I was overtraining my body, and I was exposed to all these environmental toxins. And so for me, what I did, I bought a house, right, real close to the clinic, because I knew I still needed to work a lot. But I bought a house. I started doing a lot of mental, emotional, spiritual work in my life that I just got really, really focused in, locked in on that. I started applying intermittent fasting, a really low carb diet, which I knew worked for me in the past to help me overcome irritable bowel. But because, things change in life, I had fallen off course, and there wasn't really much science out. This was, 7 years ago now. So this was 2010. Nobody was really talking about ketogenic diet back, and intermittent fasting was very rare. I just had known for myself, I had experienced really good results with it back in like 2005, 2006, that period of time. And so I started following that and applying it, stopped training so much. And like today, I work out 4 days a week, right? And we'll go through, what I do with fasting and stuff as we go on. Bought a house, got a shower filter, you know what I mean? Just got rid of, as many of the environmental toxins as I could. So really focusing on my posture, doing my spinal exercises, things like that. And, in a matter of, I think it was roughly about 6 weeks to 2 months, it started fading. And then by 3 months, it was just basically a little scar that was there. And to me, I felt God just pressing on my heart that, hey, you know what? That now that I have victory over this, and this is just a symbolic mechanism that my body can heal itself, and that if my body can heal itself, every single person on the planet, their body, as long as there's life in their body, it can heal. And that I had victory over it. And when you have victory over something, I think that in life, that's it's like a pass to have authority over it and to speak over that. And so from then, I would tell my story to my patients and whatnot. And we've just had, so many different cancer patients come into my clinic, and we've seen, really good results with a vast majority of them. And it's just been a really, really a blessing. I've worked with people long distance and whatnot, and, just really try to put out great content to help empower people with their health journey, whether it's cancer or any other chronic disease.
That's really neat. Yeah, and I trying to build this website and the podcast on top of everything, on top of having a day job and nailing writer's protocol and putting out good content and all that. It's, I have been running myself to the ground, and when I tell people, in the health field about my daily rituals and stuff, I'm starting to get some raised eyebrows and that sort of thing. So I am actually taking a step back, and
you need to. Yeah, you need to, because ultimately, at the end of the day, right, it's not really about what we produce; it's about who we are, right? So you're producing something great here, but at the same time, more important to all your family, your friends, the people around you, right, is who you are. And if you're stressed out and overwhelmed, you can't bring your best.
No good to anybody.
Yeah, exactly.
So you said something interesting there, your body type and how many carbs were good or were not good for it. How would you go about assessing, the right amount of carbs for someone individually?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's gonna range for different people, obviously. So you want to find where you feel like your sweet spot is. Ultimately, I'm a huge fan of creating metabolic flexibility and energy efficiency in the body. Metabolic flexibility means basically the ability for your body to run and utilize ketones as an energy source or glucose as an energy source. Most people on the planet, their body is not adapted to where they can use ketones as an energy source. They're really only able to use glucose, and that's not good, right? And that causes more oxidative stress and inflammation in the body. So we want to be able to use both, okay? And so basically, you want to kind of find your sweet spot to where you are able to go Ideally, like the best way to know you're metabolically flexible is how long can you fast, right? If you can only go 3 or 4 hours and you feel dizzy, exhausted, nauseous, right? Headache, irritable, hangry, right? All those types of things, you are metabolically inflexible. And that's an environment for chronic disease. That's a terrible environment. So if you can go, if you can go 16 hours, for example, or at least 12 hours without consuming food, that's a sign you are very metabolically flexible. Now, when I'm talking about 12 or 16 hours, I'm not talking about like post workout, right? So if you work out, typically you're going to want to consume some food. But let's say 12 hours from like 6 p.m., right? You finish dinner to 6 a.m. the next morning. Okay. I call that a simple fast, right? It's like, hey, to me, it's very simple. Somebody that has a decent level of metabolic flexibility or just even a beginner's level of metabolic flexibility should be able to do that with just water, right? If you can't do that, if you're like, I've got to have this nighttime snack, that's a sign that your body's building metabolic disease. That's a really big problem. Okay. Ideally, you want to be able to get up to 16 hours, at least a 16-hour fast where you can still perform. And I'm not talking about restricting fluids. I'm a huge fan of doing water. I've got diluted broth right here, which gives minerals. But from any sort of like significant calories, right, you should be able to go, this period of time. And so you want to find your sweet spot. So for me, if I'm eating too many carbohydrates, I'm not able to fast for a long time. I'm not able to have metabolic flexibility, right? So for me right now, we're doing this interview and it's 10:40 a.m. Eastern time. And I haven't eaten since I finished dinner last night, 6 p.m., right? So, and I feel great. I don't feel hungry at all. I feel really mentally sharp. Okay, that's a sign of metabolic flexibility. My body, broke down, utilized the food that I consumed, okay? And now it's running off of stored energy, right? It may have broken down a little bit of glycogen, which is stored sugar in my liver, my muscle tissues, okay? And then it's breaking down dietary or really body fat now that it's producing into ketones, okay? And fueling my brain. Ketones are a great energy source for the brain, for the body. So I feel extremely mentally sharp. So if you can feel mentally sharp at, what is that? that's 16 plus hours, okay, of fasting, that's a sign you have really good metabolic flexibility. And if you have good metabolic flexibility, your chance of developing cancer or another sort of degenerative disease goes down significantly. And metabolic flexibility goes hand in hand with energy efficiency, right? Which is basically, does your body get more efficient with utilizing energy? Which, the more metabolically flexible you are, the more efficient your body is at using energy. Like, why does an obese there's overweight people that can't go more than 3 or 4 hours without eating. Why is that? They have tons and tons and tons of energy on them, but they're extremely energy inefficient. So their body can't and they're metabolically inflexible. So they can't tap into that energy storage. And so their body's constantly having this signal that, hey, I need more fuel, more fuel, more fuel, even though they've got, months worth of fuel living on them. Okay. And they can tap into that at any time.
I'm glad you put it that way, especially the metabolic flexibility piece, being able to go back and forth. I feel like sometimes in our health world it turns into keto versus not keto, the vegans and that sort of thing. But I mean, ideally that's kind of the route that I've been going with my own personal health, is just being able to go back and forth and not having to eat all the time and that sort of thing, but not being necessarily scared of just having a carb at the same time.
Exactly.
Now, I know you mentioned you work with or people come into the clinic dealing with cancer and you're helping with them. Does that dial get adjusted? Does it get turned one way or the other for you, for someone that is actively going through cancer and trying to reverse it? Are you suggesting that they go full time on keto for some extended period of time, or what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I definitely personally lean towards the ketogenic diet because I find it to be the easiest way to that, along with fasting, to be the kind of like partner tandem to develop this level of metabolic flexibility. And we know that cancer cells have more insulin receptors and they're really driven. They have metabolic dysfunction where they're basically unable to use or create energy through their mitochondria. So they're dependent upon anaerobic respiration, which is the breakdown of glucose and the formation of lactic acid, right? So this is basically how they run. We know that science is telling us that. Now, if somebody says, hey, I want to really follow a vegan diet, I'm okay with that. Like, hey, vegan diet can be great. I'm not a huge fan of doing a lot of meat anyways, right? It's not like I do a keto bacon kind of menu,
Yeah.
right? I do more of a a very low carb, right? But if the person's eating meat, it's once a day, right? Small amounts, typically at their most relaxed period of time, because they need to create a lot of stomach acid and digestive juices to break that down. And I think there can be a lot of benefits to that. But if somebody wants to do a vegan diet, hey, as long as we're able to develop this metabolic flexibility to where they're able to use ketones and be able to fast, and tighten up their eating window, and they're able to do that successfully on a vegan diet, then great. Okay. If they're not, if they're noticing that they just feel awful when they try to fast on this vegan diet, then it's not working. Right now, the whole thing is, hey, we can do actually a vegan keto diet, right? That's definitely possible, right? You can do both. Okay. So the key is getting all these good fats, non-starchy vegetables, herbs, right? Certain fermented foods, things like that. We can do stuff like that and, still not consume animal products. It just restricts our overall, the amount of foods that we're able to consume, but we're able to get all our micronutrients in, tons of antioxidants in, and, it's really supportive to helping somebody reduce cancer cell energy formation. And when cancer cells aren't able to produce enough energy, they're not able to produce a strong shield, right? That protects them from the immune system. And so therefore the immune system is going to be able to hunt them down and regulate them. So yeah, I'm okay if somebody comes in, they're like, hey, I've been reading about this or reading about Gerson or whatever it is. I'm like, hey, that's great. As long as you're okay with, hey, we're going to try to extend out fasting and do metabolic, basically improve your metabolic flexibility. And if you want to do carrot juice, we're just going to see how your body responds, right? Again, if you're do carrot juice at 2 p.m., right? And do it again at 4, and then do a big salad at 6. Okay. And then you're able to fast again till 2 o'clock. Great. Right. You know what I mean? Then it's awesome. Okay. So, because we're creating that metabolic flexibility there.
So, and that would be just strictly under the, what am I looking for? Just the concept of creating metabolic flexibility. Like when they drink that carrot juice down, are you having them like measure their ketones and go to the ketone glucose index, and are they actually still in ketosis, or are we just talking about in that scenario being able to go back and forth and that sort of thing, not strictly staying in keto 24 hours a day?
No, they're not going to be able to. And so for me, like the big thing here is, can we extend out this fasting period, right? So do they need to get into therapeutic ketosis? I think there's a lot of advantages of it. Okay. But I'm going to work with the individual and, what they desire to do. And so with that being said, the key is, hey, can their body sustain without it being like a massive stress on their system, a fast, even though they're doing something like carrot juice, right? That's really, the question I'm asking in my head. And so, why is that? Because fasting itself should naturally reduce blood sugar significantly, right? Because you're going to use up the sugar, you're going to use up glycogen, all right? And the body, and then insulin goes down, and then the body should start producing some ketones, okay? At some point, if you have a 4 to 6 hour eating window, at some point your body's got to use some dietary, body fat basically for energy. And when that happens and sugar goes down, insulin's down, now your white blood cells have a stronger, what we call phagocytic index, right? Meaning that their ability to scavenge cancer cells goes up significantly. Your AMPK pathway, adenosine monophosphate kinase pathway, which is an enzyme that when that's high, ATP is cellular energy. So when AMPK is high, it signals to the body to say, hey, we need to produce more cellular energy because it's basically a precursor to ATP, right? We need 2 more phosphate molecules on top of AMP to produce ATP, the cellular energy. And so what does that do? That actually drives, believe it or not, that actually drives more glucose towards normal cells and away from cancer cells. It's a mechanism that happens in the body. It also reduces the mTOR pathway, which is a stimulating agent for cancer growth. And it also starts to basically, there's some research coming out talking about how it starts to divert cancer cells away from glycolysis, right? And fast energy production. So basically, starvation, and to me, like a ketogenic diet is a fasting mimicking diet, right? And so fasting is something all of our ancestors did. All the great sages throughout the history of mankind have done it. Plato said he fasted for greater mental clarity and energy efficiency. That was his quote. Obviously, Jesus fasted for 40 days. So basically, fasting has incredible therapeutic purposes. Our ancestors fasted for either due to food restriction, right, which is food scarcity, which is really common, or for spiritual purposes. Like, for example, I know the Jewish people, they fast on the Day of Atonement every year, right? So Yom Kippur every single year, it's like a full day fast. Okay, so the full, a 24-hour sundown to sundown fast every single year, right? So that's going to be healthy for somebody. On top of that, you've got, for Lent, a lot of Christians fast. So Ramadan, for Muslims. So there's people, all different faiths that have fasting kind of built into their schedule. And then of course, oftentimes people would fast for longer periods of time for spiritual growth. Fasting, Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, talked a lot about fasting as far as for health purposes. He used to say that was one of the greatest healing miracles would come through fasting. Jesus, when he was talking about certain conditions that people had, he would talk about these things only come out with prayer and fasting. Okay, and so of course changing mindset, prayer, obviously the power of prayer we know scientifically is extremely powerful, and then fasting from a physical, right? So doing something in the physical, fasting is the greatest healing technique that we can practice. Okay, it's fasting, and we could spend a ton of money on supplements, things like that, but the benefits that you're going to get from fasting go far beyond that.
Yeah, I feel like us Christians could do well to start to bake in fasting to the religion a little more. I feel like we've lost sight of that a little bit as a whole. Yeah. So from the physical health perspective, how, I mean, in talking about a longer fast, outside of just the the intermittent style, is there any kind of particular schedule as far as month by month, year by year, that sort of thing that I don't know. I know it's different for everybody, but some sort of ideal that you usually at least try to have people shoot for as far as how often they should be doing a longer fast and how long is that fast, that sort of thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. It really depends, again, on that person's metabolic flexibility and energy efficiency. So somebody that has more insulin resistance, they really have trouble losing weight, for example. Okay, that person that carries more body fat will benefit from doing longer extended fasts, right? So maybe doing like a 3 to 10 day fast every quarter, so every 3 months or so can be extremely therapeutic and help those individuals really maintain their optimal weight. And the great thing about it is, fasting really improves your brain. It's one of the best things for brain function, helps stimulate something called autophagy, which is basically where your body breaks down old decaying cells and uses the matter from those old decaying cells to build stronger, healthier cells. And we need an environment that has very low insulin in order to do that, okay, to trigger that, and low mTOR, right? And so basically fasting is really the best way to do that. And so, you're going to get more of that. So, Alzheimer's disease, for example, is a disease where that's associated with an inability. The body hasn't been able to have this cleanup process, this autophagy process. Same thing with cancer. So doing a longer fast in those cases can be great. For somebody like myself, that's like 8% body fat. For me personally, I like to stay really fit. I just fast pretty much every day. I mean, obviously I eat, but what I do is an intermittent fast. So 4 days a week when I work out, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday on a typical week. And on those days, I eat 2 times. I fast in the morning. Now I may have like we have a recipe for our turmeric fat burning coffee, which is basically just grass-fed butter and coffee and turmeric and some MCT oil or something like that. So it's just fat, no protein, no carbs, so it doesn't impact insulin. Insulin stays balanced and level. In fact, coffee, believe it or not, organic obviously is what you want, actually is very rich in chlorogenic acid, which helps with insulin sensitivity, right? So it actually helps with that whole process. And so I might have something like that and diluted broth, right? Just not like a bone broth, but like a vegetable broth or organic free-range chicken broth that I buy from the store, and then I dilute it 1/3 broth, 2/3 hot water. So it's like a mineral drink, okay, to keep my electrolytes up. Or you could just do like some pink salt in water. Sometimes I'll do that, keep my energy up. And typically then I'll work out around lunchtime, and then I'll eat usually a healthy protein shake or protein pudding with avocados in there, coconut milk, and good quality protein powder, something like that, something easy on the digestive tract, and then a good high quality dinner. And then the 3 days a week where I am not working out, I only eat typically one meal a day, right? Or in a really tight eating window, that's usually 2 to 4 hours. Okay. So for example, yesterday I didn't work out. Okay. And I ate between 4 and 6 o'clock. So my wife had made some of what we call our keto chocolate chip cookies, which are awesome. Low carb, right? Tastes great. So I had a few of those at it was like 4:15 or something like that. And then we had dinner at 5:30. And so that's pretty much all I ate, and I feel great, right? So I had a really, really tight eating window. So I got my meals in, I got high quality calories in, but it was in a tight eating window. And so I will typically do that on Wednesdays, Saturday, and Sunday. I just eat one meal typically, right? We're in a very tight eating window if I do eat like a little snack here and there. And I find that my body really thrives on that. I'm able to maintain my muscle mass, my performance, and actually feel a lot better doing that than if I were to eat multiple meals in a day, right? I feel actually a lot better. In fact, there's been times where I come off of that and I just don't feel the same level of energy. My brain is cloudy. I just don't feel as good. And this is where I really thrive. So it's basically like 11 meals a week, right? And the great thing about that is, okay, it really brings down your food bill too, because you're not eating quite as much. And people are like, well, how do you get all those calories in? I don't try to, like this sort of a diet, I'm not trying to calorie restrict. I'm not trying to say, hey, I'm only going to eat this amount of calories, okay? In fact, when I do eat, I eat a lot, right? I eat a lot of food, and I don't count calories or anything like that. I just eat good food, healthy foods. But in general, your body becomes more efficient at utilizing energy, and your actual calorie needs go down, believe it or not. And so it's really interesting how it all works. And I've just found that personally, I seem to thrive on this sort of a plan. Now, could somebody do, periodic, somebody that's thin like you or I, do a periodic 3 to maybe week-long fast and get a lot of benefit out of it? Absolutely, right? We can do amazing. So really, ultimately, I just try to encourage people to incorporate some level of fasting into their lifestyle. Maybe just, best place to start is a simple fast, 12 hours between dinner and breakfast, okay? And then try to bump it up. We call it the brunch fast, where you go to, let's say you finish dinner at 7 p.m., then you don't eat till 9 a.m., right? And so that's 14 hours. And then if you're feeling good with that, you might try to bump it up to 16 hours, okay? And then you try that approach. And the key is you got to stay hydrated, and you need to keep your electrolytes up, so good salts. And I always tell people, food does not give us energy. Water and electrolytes do. Our nervous system runs off of, it's an electric current. So you think about electricity, our body, we're electrical beings. So what do we need to conduct electricity? We need electrolytes. That's why they're called electrolytes. And we need water. Water is a conduit, right? So if you're dehydrated and you're deficient in electrolytes, you're not going to be able to produce much energy. Food itself, we need for recovery, right? In order to break down the food to get the vital components so we can rebuild new cells, right? We need those resources to build new cells. That's what we need it for, recovery. And so food will not, water and electrolytes will always give you more energy than food will.
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, that's about where I am these days in terms of the overall schedule and that sort of thing. And I do try to bake in a longer fast about once a quarter as well. So it's
Yeah.
good to hear we're on the same page. Do we have a hard stop here in 1 minute, or do you have any time on the other side of the hour?
No, I got some time.
Okay, good deal.
Yeah. I got a workout lined up after this.
I was tempted to dig into your workout schedule, but we'll keep it to cancer. Do you? I mean, I guess for folks going through cancer, do you have them doing any style of workout over another? Is it high intensity stuff? Is it longer lower intensity stuff? Anything there for people that are actively going through cancer?
Yeah, that's a great question. Again, it really comes back to their metabolic flexibility and energy efficiency. But I always have everybody going out and getting in nature, right? Going out walking, ideally barefoot, getting out barefoot in grass, dirt, sand, even on concrete, going to a park. I tell all my clients, there's an incredible healing power in nature, right? And it's really what we know as an electromagnetic field. And trees and grass and things like that has this natural electromagnetic field that humans have adapted to since the beginning of mankind. It's very healthy. Our body responds really well, and it helps tone down the part of our nervous system that's associated with fight or flight, the fear-based nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system. And helps increase activity in our parasympathetic nervous system, which we need for resting, healing, regenerating. So getting out, moving the body itself, low intensity movement is healing. It's healing in nature. It's parasympathetic. It helps, again, stimulate that part of our nerve system that's associated with healing and regeneration, and getting out in nature. So that's like the first big thing that I have everybody doing, and multiple walks every day, getting out in nature as much as possible. Sunbathing, right, to a healthy level, obviously, not burning or something like that. So getting out, getting in the sun, getting on the grass, tree hugging, right, foresting, right, where you're going out in the forest. Really, really healthy things to be doing on a regular basis. And so because of that, many of my clients, they start taking up the idea of hiking, right? So they start hiking and things like that, which is great, right? Now, I'm personally a huge fan of weight training, resistance training. I love it myself. However, again, if somebody has not done that in the past, right, that's not something, when I'm coaching them on cancer, that I'm telling them, hey, you need to go and start doing push-ups and this and that. I just want them moving and getting out in nature, okay? And then from there, they'll start to take on it. If they start to build this sort of a lifestyle, they're going to be able to listen to their intuition and the messages God's telling them. And as long as they've patterned this into their lifestyle, they're going to take on the appropriate amount of exercise for them, in my opinion.
I love how you brought nature into it. Yeah, I can't get enough of the forest bathing studies that the Japanese are doing in terms of skyrocketing immune systems and all that. Just from spending time in nature. Exactly.
I mean, we're always in these kind of negative electromagnetic fields, right? Because we spend our time indoors. We're you and I looking right at a computer here. I got my cell phone right here. So all of these sorts of electromagnetic frequencies are very new in the history of mankind. Okay, and because they're new, they're a stressor, right? And so maybe, hundreds of years from now, hopefully mankind will have adapted to that stressor. But the reality is that right now, they are a major stressor on our genome. And so one thing that we can do to help reduce that stress is balancing it out by getting out in nature and grounding our body. And that helps our body to deal. We get free electrons from the earth, and it helps our body deal with the oxidative stress that we're going to get from these electromagnetic fields inside of our house.
Very good, very good. Bringing it back to fasting. So, like I was telling you, I think before we started recording, I'm getting a pro keto and an anti keto, and the conversation keeps building on each other. But I think the most recent place where I've stopped is. Let's see. So people will say that if for someone that's on ketosis and not really coming off of ketosis for an extended period of time for therapeutic purposes, I'm getting from the other side that would be an acidic. It would be creating a lot of acidity in the body, and then I guess then a pro keto person would say that those the body has its own buffers. and that that it wouldn't really let itself get acidic. But
Yeah,
then,
it's a really I love this question because actually, believe it or not, when you're burning ketones, even though ketones are acids, your body's not producing a lot of lactic acid. So what people don't understand that say that a ketogenic diet is acidic is that what they don't understand about it is that when your body's burning glucose as its primary fuel source, you're producing a lot of lactic acid as basically an alternative, as a byproduct. You're producing a lot of metabolic waste and that itself is that's very acidic, and that's going to create more acidity in the system. Now, really, the biggest key is, are you getting electrolytes into your system? Because electrolytes, right, will help balance that out, right? And so they're extremely important. Magnesium, sodium, potassium. In fact, that's the buffering mechanisms. The body will take sodium out of the joints, which will cause degeneration because sodium brings water. It can take magnesium out of muscle tissue, which can cause spasms, and endothelial, like the endothelial tissue of the blood vessels, can get very, very tight and taut. So that can happen. Potassium, right? So we can have these different types of mechanisms that take place. But actually, done right, a well-formulated ketogenic diet, okay, and particularly the way that I teach it, you're going to get a lot of vegetables in your diet, so non-starchy vegetables. You're going to get lots of electrolytes, and we use a lot of avocados, things like that. And you're going to have less acids built through the mitochondria, less lactic acid as a byproduct through the mitochondria, and therefore your body's actually going to have better oxygen or better aerobic metabolism. So your overall acids that are formed are going to be reduced, okay? And in order to develop, for example, like a ketoacidosis, okay, which is a disease state basically, and it's an emergency state, you've got basically you can't. It's impossible to do unless you are a type 1 diabetic who's not producing any insulin at all, okay? And so to get to that level of clinical acidity. But in general, if you're in a mild level of ketosis, okay, it just tells us that your body's really, really good at utilizing oxygen and fat for energy, okay, and therefore your acid load is actually going to go down significantly.
that's interesting, and yeah, that's where I was gonna finish with was those buffers, or the body starts dumping minerals, which then it's stealing minerals from the body. But if anything, you're almost flipping the script and saying that it would be somebody just running off of glucose that would really need to be concerned about that acidity and demineralization.
Yes. Yeah. People that have poor metabolic flexibility are going to be acidic. Okay. If you have good metabolic flexibility, you're going to tend to be slightly alkaline.
Could you speak to some of the epigenetic effects that people are finding just in the presence of ketones? Have you gotten much into that?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's awesome. So basically, we know epigenetics is how the environment impacts the genes in our body. And so, for example, in the brain, okay, our brain, ketones, when ketones are present in the brain, which means we're in mild ketosis basically, because the brain runs mostly on sugar, but in the presence, when sugar goes down, blood sugar goes down, the body starts creating these ketones. It can take in about a third to half of its energy from ketones. And so basically, when that's the case, it stimulates something called brain-derived neurotrophic growth factor, which is really important for basically neuronal stability and reducing excitability in the brain. So like, for example, it helps balance out what we call our glutamate to GABA ratio. So GABA is an inhibitory neurotransmitter. Glutamate's an excitatory neurotransmitter. And for many people, they have too much excitation in their brain. And when they have that, they end up with basically more inflammation, which can cause anxiety, irritability, anger. It can cause increased emotionalism, just a whole, depression, lots of different issues that we are related to mood disorders, right? Like, for example, whenever I hear about somebody or see somebody, throwing a temper tantrum or a fit or, that's not a child, right? An adult, I'm thinking that person's probably got poor blood sugar. right? Their blood sugar, if we were able to stabilize their blood sugar, they would be a lot less reactionary, right? So, I mean, that's just a powerful thing right there. And then on top of that, so for quality of life, it's huge. And then on top of that, it's going to help reduce the risk of Alzheimer's disease because we have less of this sort of inflammation in the brain. And also it upregulates repair mechanisms, particularly glutathione, which is our body's master antioxidant, and different enzymes that are associated with that help with tissue repair, right? So really good for that. Helps stimulate autophagy. Autophagy is, an epigenetic mechanism that helps clean up our body and help our body become more efficient. So I mean, we can do a whole presentation, we can do a whole talk just on the epigenetic effects that take place when our body is using ketones and senses that, hey, and really the key is this, is not just ketones, but actually insulin going down, right? Because for example, a diabetic can produce ketones, but their insulin may be really high, okay? So they may be urinating out ketones and have ketones in their body, but their insulin's really high. And because their insulin's high, they're not getting those epigenetic benefits of ketosis. So it's only really ketosis when insulin is down and the body's actually using the ketones, not just producing them, but using them for energy. And that's another thing that a lot of people get wrong, is that they kind of associate it with this whole diabetic type thing. And and that's why they tested on like a simple urinalysis, right? You go in and get a simple urinalysis, they're going to test for ketones. And if they see ketones, they think you have a blood sugar issue, right? Which you may, right? But at the same time, what they're not testing is, did you produce those ketones and have insulin down? Because then that's actually very healthy, right? It's a very healthy mechanism. And when that happens, when insulin is low, that's when and your body's able to utilize another energy source, such as ketones, that's when these great epigenetic mechanisms take place.
Yeah, excuse me. And that's where the glucose ketone index comes in, right? Are you having people kind of track those two numbers and then seeing where they land and get that score, or are you just mainly sticking to how do you feel, and are you and letting that be the guide as to are they using the ketones or not?
That's typically what I'm doing, is just going off of really how they feel. Okay. And so obviously they can do blood pricks and we can look at what's going on with that. And so usually, like for therapeutic ketosis, we want to be over 1.0 millimole per liter. Okay. So that's typically therapeutic ketosis, but depending on the individual, they may feel better at 0.5 or 0.8. Okay. I know for me, I do great in 0.5 to 1.0 in that range. I feel really good. Okay. And so, that's typically where I'm getting with my fasting. And I feel really, really good in that range. And so ultimately, that's really what it's about. Again, I'm not dogmatic in that, hey, we've got to be able to produce this, really high ketone level. Okay. I'm more about, hey, what is your metabolic flexibility like? How do you feel when you fasted for 17, 18 hours? Okay. Do you feel good? Do you feel energetic? Do you feel like you're productive and efficient? And then when you eat, do you feel like you have to have a nap afterwards? Okay.
Yeah.
Like it's naps are great. They're a therapeutic tool too, but like, do you depend on it? You know what I mean? So these are questions that to me are very good questions to ask yourself, to really find out more about your metabolic flexibility and energy efficiency.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I guess how you feel is probably a pretty good indicator of what's going on. Did you know that exposure to blue light, or basically what we think of as white light from any normal light bulb after the sun goes down, is damaging to your mitochondria, severely throws off your circadian rhythm in terms of how restorative or not your sleep is, or how easily you get into sleep for that matter, completely throws off your hormone production, including melatonin, which you think of first and foremost as a sleep hormone, but it's also very, very anti-cancer, and if your body isn't producing it, you've just lost a primary defense against cancer, or you haven't had that defense for your whole life, I should say, if you haven't been paying attention to your light hygiene. This is why when the sun goes down, Ryder knows it's his job to turn off all of the regular lights and turn on all the red lights, which we have in all the lamps in our house. And it's why if Teddy and I are going to be on the computer or watch TV or anything like that after the kids go to bed, we will be wearing blue light blocking glasses. The bulbs and glasses are an extremely small investment to make relative to the massive health benefit you get from them. And even though the neighbors might think it's a little weird at first, I promise you, once you go red, you'll never go back. The atmosphere and feeling at nighttime, now that we've made the switch, is incredibly more peaceful and restorative. And it's actually really upsetting. Now, if I open the fridge and forget to be wearing my glasses or something like that, you can really tell you're not supposed to be getting that light at night once you've taken it away. Would you like to know everything like this you can possibly do to transform your home that you spend the majority of your time in away from something that's harming your family into something that's actually supercharging all of your health? We have everything you could possibly do to remove all of the bad, replace it with all of the good, all in one place in our ultimate healthy home checklist, which we really want to get into as many homes as we can, because we know it's stuff like this that is actually going to make a difference in our goal of preventing and reversing as many cases of childhood cancer as we can. And that is why it is absolutely free to download at mykidcurescancer.com/healthy-home. mykidcurescancer.com/healthy-home. Please do put it up on your fridge and start hitting 1 or 2 check marks a week. I promise you will feel really, really good about yourself and your life. And you can also see everything we use for all this type of stuff to make our home healthier, and the supplements we use and foods we order for that matter, at mykidcurescancer.com/what we use, with dashes in the middle of what we use. So if you're ever wondering what we use, it's at mykidcurescancer.com/what-we-use. Hopefully that's easy enough to remember. All right, let's get back to the goods with Dr. Jockers. Back to epigenetics, if I understand it right, as far as cancer cells specifically are concerned, it's not just, it's not just starving the cancer cell and that sort of thing, but they're actually finding, the right switches are getting flipped in terms of apoptosis and anti-metastatic effects and stuff like that, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be anti-angiogenic, meaning that basically cancer cells, they release things, VEGF, which is a vasoendothelial growth factor, and that chemical signals blood vessels to branch off and give more direct blood supply to the cancer cells. So when we go into ketosis, it's anti-angiogenic, meaning that basically it blocks that VEGF mechanism, so the cancer cell doesn't get that direct blood supply. When cancers have, tumors, these fast-growing cancer cells, this combination of them, when they have a lot of blood supply, it's really tough to stop them. Okay, and it's also tough to go in and do a surgery because a person's going to bleed out a lot if they were going to go for a surgical removal. So basically, we want mechanisms to reduce that, and also it helps protect your p53 gene, which is basically your security guard on the genome. And so p53 gene can become damaged when we have excess oxidative stress. And one of the main things that causes excess oxidative stress is burning glucose in our body. And so it damages the security guard, and now we get these cells growing abnormally and out of control. So the epigenetic element of a ketogenic diet will help protect p53 gene in normal cells and help stimulate basically cancer cell destruction, help stimulate kind of backup mechanisms for apoptosis in the cancer cells.
I love it. I love it.
And part of that's driven by AMPK, which we talked about earlier.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to going back over this interview and dissecting all the different pathways you brought up.
And by the way, just for the listeners, I don't know exactly when you're going to put this out, but the Truth About Cancer live symposium is coming up here. We're doing this interview a few weeks beforehand, and I'll actually be doing my presentation on how sugar feeds cancer and going into in detail all these different pathways. I'm going to be talking about the HMP shunt. I'm going to be talking about phagocytic index, AMPK, mTOR, things like that. So, hopefully listeners can tune into that too.
I will see you there, and I'm looking forward
Oh,
to
great.
that presentation. Yeah,
Great.
yeah, and yeah, I think we'll be putting this out before the Truth About Cancer. So this is good timing. It's good
Yeah.
timing. Personal curiosity. I listen to Dr. Pompa a lot. I don't know if you're
Yeah.
familiar with his
He's a
work.
friend of mine. Yeah.
Nice, nice. He recommends doing. He has his little 5-1-1 thing where he does 5 days of intermittent, 1 day of like a
Yeah.
24, and then he encourages 1 day of more of an all day eating. He called his feast day, just to
Yeah.
keep keep the body on its toes, more or less, not help it, not let it get too used to the fasting. Do you incorporate anything like that?
My wife does that. I've told her about it. She loves the idea. She'll do fasting if she can have a feast day, which I think for many people, in
knowing
their
that's there.
mindset, yeah, that really helps them with the process. Me personally, I just don't feel good on a feast day. So I'm like, you know what? I don't feel like I need it. I feel like I feast pretty much almost every day, but it's that one meal, right? So I'm like, hey, I feel like I am feasting on that one day. But I think the general idea for me is that I just try not to be dogmatic about what I'm consuming. Now, in general, I know I do better on a lower carb diet, but there may be one day a week where I do carrots. I feel like carrots are great for my microbiome. So we do like steamed vegetables with grass-fed butter, and sometimes we have carrots in there. And I don't do a lot, but I'll do a little bit more carbs on certain days, typically on workout days. And I feel great with that. So, and also I like to drink coconut water kefir, so Kavitas, in the evening, which typically, they have a little bit of sugar and not a whole lot. It's fermented, but certain days I may feel like I want to drink 1.5. So I just try not to be dogmatic, and I also really try to listen to my body. And at the same time, if I am having trouble fasting the next day, then I'm thinking about what I did the day before that may have caused the struggle with the metabolic flexibility, or even the week before, right? Did I stay on my regimen? Okay, because you know what, right at the end of the day, for me, I love feeling amazing at 11:18 a.m. without actually consuming, a meal, right? And being able to perform really, really well. So I like that. So I want to look at kind of what I did, right, throughout the day. Now with cancer patients, I'm going to have them try to really tighten up and keep their eating window real tight, right? That's so usually I'll do like a 4 to 6 hour eating window with them, and trying to move them in that direction. So it may not start immediately like that. Or sometimes if they're motivated, with autoimmune too, we'll do like a week-long fast, and if they're motivated and they may have had experience with it in the past and felt good with it, we'll just do a long fast to get them in the cycle, and then we'll do more intermittent fasting on a regular basis. And then we're looking for feedback mechanisms, right? So it's like, hey, is this person saying, hey, all of a sudden I was doing this fasting and all this kind of stuff, and like now it's just like I just don't have energy, or I can't wake up in the morning, this and that. Okay, so then that would be a good time to cycle out and see how that helps. Okay, as long as they're doing the electrolytes, as long as they're doing all the things that they're supposed to do. But I do like Pompa's idea of 5-1-1 just from the perspective of, I think it's easy to grasp for people. I think it's something like, hey, I can fast one day and do intermittent fasting if I can have one day where I just eat a ton of carbs, eat a ton of protein, whatever I want to do. It's definitely more sustainable.
I like it. Well, I think this conversation in general will be very helpful to a lot of people, going back and forth between all the different theories. And it doesn't have to be one or the other, I think is is where we've landed here.
Yeah.
That's great, David. I always finish with boiling. If you could, I usually warn people about this. I didn't but I'm sure you'll do just fine. If you could boil everything you knew down into 3 golden rules on how to stay healthy and disease-free, or possibly become healthy and disease-free, what would you think those rules might be?
Well, I would say number 1 is find inspiration every single day. Okay, like for me, I feel like I am I don't serve the people in my life well if I'm not inspired. But if I'm inspired, then man, great things happen. Okay, I'm a great father, a great husband. I'm a great doctor. In every way, I'm able to really make an impact when I'm inspired. So I would say the same for everybody else. Make it a habit of finding inspiration. Okay, it could be stories, whatever it is, a daily devotional, but get inspired every single day, and that will set your mind right, right? And then from there, it becomes easier. Like if your mind's right, then incorporating intermittent fasting or fasting strategies, which would be like a number 2, is great. So, Jesus talked about prayer and fasting, right? So there you go. Your mind, getting your mind right, being inspired, and living in a sense, a prayer. Prayer shouldn't just be like something you say in the morning. Prayer should be your daily activities. Like your daily conversation with God and the people around you should be a living prayer, right? And so you get your mind right, start to create that metabolic flexibility and energy efficiency is just so powerful, and move your body and get in nature, like just like we talked about. So those would be the 3 things.
Those are 3 good ones. And if you had any kind of final thought or sentiment for anyone going through cancer right now that you just like to take us out with, that would be good too.
Yeah, I would just say that there's a lot of hope. Okay. And I think that's the biggest thing. There is a lot of hope, and you want to just listen to your body. And it's really just kind of like I was talking about with my story. You got to take inventory of your life. It's a sign that things need to change. You can't continue to do what you've always done, because that's what created this environment to begin with. And so things have to change. And it starts with your mindset, starts with, how you look at your body, and where, you ask yourself, where do you feel enslaved, right? For many people, they're enslaved in their relationships, that their relationships are poor. For other people, it's their career, for other people, it's food addictions and stuff like that. So think about where you're enslaved. And those are things that you need to start really going after and chipping away. And you need to surround yourself with people and podcasts like this and people around you that are going to help support and encourage you and help you in those really challenging areas where you're enslaved to break free. Awesome.
That's a good one. That's a real good one.
Yeah.
All right, sir. I hope we didn't keep you from your workout too long. If for those wanting to know more about what you're up to, all things Dr. Jockers, where would you point them? And are you working on anything in particular at the moment that you'd like to direct people's attention to? That sort of
my website's drjockers.com. And really active Facebook, Dr. David Jockers. And also I do 2 new video trainings every week on my YouTube. So it's just Dr. David Jockers on YouTube. Website, of course, is the main hub, and do a lot on social media. And also creating a product here coming out towards the end of the year that's designed to really help people incorporate more fasting into their life. And it's called Keto Edge. And it's a blend of exogenous ketones as well as adaptogenic mushrooms, some of the most powerful clinically studied mushrooms: cordyceps, reishi, lion's mane, shiitake, king trumpet, and I'm forgetting one other, right? MCT powder in there, and it's got branched chain amino acids. And so really, really powerful product. I'm really excited about that. And we're creating a fasting program to go along with that hopefully will be ready to go out in January of next year, designed to really help people incorporate this into their life and be successful with it.
Wow. Well, I look forward to seeing all that, and we'll certainly link it back in the show notes to this episode for anyone listening in the future. And it sounds like something I'll want to get into and promote myself. That's awesome. That's great.
Sounds great.
David, Dr. David Jockers, thank you so much for your time. You have a good one.
Absolutely, Ryan. It's a privilege and an honor, and appreciate the great work that you're doing.
Right back at you, sir. You have a good one.
All right, you too.
Well, there you go, folks. Don't think keto versus Gerson. Think, am I metabolically flexible? Your body has the ability to run off of 2 fuel sources for a reason. It's not just by accident. And whether or not you're doing something like the ketogenic diet, you really need to be sure you're using this ability and get it back if you've lost it, because there really are so many benefits to fasting. It's one of the most powerful things you can be doing, and it's absolutely free. In fact, it's negative money, as like Dr. Jocker said, your food bill goes down. I really hope you got some good insight out of this episode. I don't know how you couldn't have on that note, and I really hope you'll share it with a friend who needs this information. This conversation can be applied to just about any health challenge. You can do that and find the highlight and summary article and links to all the resources mentioned and our thoughts on how this particular information can be applied to what to do about childhood cancer at mykidcurescancer.com/David-Jockers. mykidcurescancer.com/David-Jockers. And a big thank you to our small but growing group of Patreon supporters. Your support really means so much to us. We probably don't tell you that enough, but you're already making such a difference in everything we do here at My Kid Cures Cancer, between the podcast and the website and the conferences and all of our social media stuff. So again, thank you for choosing to put your money towards something that helps us make healthier, thriving families. If you're not familiar with this concept, Patreon is a service that allows you to financially support creators of content that you find valuable to yourself or the world at large for that matter, with a small monthly donation of your choosing that, again, like I mentioned, really adds up to make a difference. You can find out how to be a part of this solution yourself at mykidcurescancer.com/crowd sponsor. Crowd sponsor is all one word. mykidcurescancer.com/crowd sponsor. If you are going through cancer, especially childhood cancer, like I said last week, we are building so much cool stuff into our cancer navigation program in an effort to make it as much of a no-brainer as possible. It's getting to be something really impressive that is helping a lot of people, and I would love to tell you all about it. You can find the basic info at mykidcurescancer.com/coaching. And from there, you can also set your free 15-minute intro call, and we can talk it out a bit more to see if the program is indeed something that you would benefit from. Lord willing, we will see you next week with Robin Openshaw of greensmoothiegirl.com. We talk mostly about quite a few very interesting experiences Robin has had with cancer in her own life, both childhood and adult. They were all very enlightening in their own ways, so we hope to see you back here next Monday as always for that. Music was provided by the Fat Rat and the Tasty Network, and all editing was done by my best gal, Teddy Sternagel. If you are going through cancer, the best thing you can do is just keep going. This is Ryan Sternagel signing out for now. God bless and Godspeed.